So good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, whenever you're watching this. Welcome to the Down the Lane podcast, where today I have Miles Rees, Bobby, and we have David Blackmore joining us as a guest. So obviously a 1-1 draw against Enfield yesterday at home. I'm going to go to you, Miles, first. Your thoughts?
Yeah, just a really frustrating afternoon. People build it as I think a game that we had to win to sort of stay close enough to the teams like Farnborough and Hampton above us. I thought we played fairly well, probably better than we have in previous home games, but just couldn't take our chance. I thought we had countless chances I can remember where just couldn't find the back of the net or players getting each other's way or that last bit of quality was just missing in the final third, unfortunately. And it just came back to haunt us again. I'm not sure the amount of times that we've led at half time at prior lane this season and then managed to lose or draw. It's got to be in sort of five, six at this point. So yeah, just a real shame really because I felt like I could have got more from the game.
Bobby, your thoughts?
It's frustrating. I mean, you look at the whole of February. We've got 1 point out of the whole of February, and games like against Farnborough and yesterday Enfield, they're the kind of games in the country we're in where we got to be picking up 4 points. With the gap, I mean, Farnborough was frustrating because we had what I felt we were dominating. We dominated the whole game and we deserved to win. And then they scored 2 late goals and that hurt us. And then for us to lose again and then to lose. And then yesterday we've drawn, but it still feels like a loss. We've got players blocking each other's shots. We've just lacking something up front. We got obviously May scored earlier. May scored late in the first half. We looked quite well in the first half. In the second half, yet again, we just stopped playing how we did in the first half and allowed another silly set piece goal to happen. I mean, good credit to Enfield. They did huff and puff and they got their goal. It was a lovely, good volley. Yeah, we just didn't. We couldn't respond, and we're now here 6 points from safety. And looking at previous years, the bottom three at this time of year did go down. So the clock is ticking. The pressure is mounting. It's pretty much it's now or never.
David, your thoughts?
Yeah, I think I'd echo the same thoughts that the guys have echoed. It's frustrating, isn't it? I think you sit in the stand or stand behind the goal or wherever you are as a fan and second guess everything. I think it's incredibly frustrating to see some very talented players playing out of position and in positions that I don't think is getting the best out of them. And I think it's frustrating to see. I think the classiest player on the pitch yesterday, and I think Adam May deserved his man of the match for Eastbourne Borough, but I thought the classiest player on the pitch came on with 10 minutes to go. And, for me, he walks on the pitch, looks a different standard, starts making things happen. One of our best chances in the first half came from Arthur Grout coming in from his left wing back position and playing in the centre of the pitch and playing some fantastic passes. And for me, that's where I sit and go, this is frustrating because I think we've probably got some real good quality players out there that we're not necessarily getting the best out of. And that's where we start getting into, you can get away with that for a portion of a match. But as a match goes on, those kind of frailties start getting found out and people who aren't playing in their natural position start making the odd mistake. And it is just the odd mistake, right? Because they're good players. But those odd mistakes cost us. And as Bobby says, 1 point out of some crucial games in January leaves us playing in our little league at the bottom and not doing particularly well in that little league.
Yeah, and I'm going to echo what all three of you have said there, really, and I'm going to sort of enhance a little bit on what you said, Dave. For me, I just feel there are too many mistakes. I think in the recent weeks, we've seen some players come into the club, and like you say, Adam May was outstanding yesterday. I just feel that when you look at some players, and listen, I'm not going to question Tommy. I mean, obviously there was talk yesterday as well about Tommy not being there. I have spoken to someone from the club, and I understand that it's to do with an FA ban from fines at Aldershot or something like that. So yeah, there was nothing more to look into. He just had a ban for a game or something. But when you look at some of the signings that have come in, we've made some really good signings, but I think everybody has an opinion, and nobody's opinion's right or wrong. And obviously, Tommy's at the helm, so it's his opinion that matters more than most. But I think in what you said there, Dave, about Arthur Grout playing out of position, I think we basically one move that we did, one transfer that we did was we got Golding from Kings Lynn, and obviously Jaden went the other way. Now we all know that Jaden was a player that played with a little bit of passion, so it was a bit of a fan's favourite. And I go back to the Horsham game. He was the only one that came off with his hands in the air to say sorry. When the so he definitely had a link with the fans. So I think that was a hard one for some fans to take. I think what makes it a bit more difficult for me, and again, I'm not a football manager. Let's be fair. If there was 861 people in that ground, Jesse, there's 861 football managers, because we can all do the job, or we all think we can do the job. But look, I'm on this platform to give my opinion, so I'm going to give it. I think to play Gold where we play him up front means that we have to move George, who is our 25 goal a year striker from last year, deeper. When to me you would want him in the box, because we move him deeper. It means that he's taken up Arthur Grout's position, so we're playing Arthur Grout at left back, left wing back. And I think to myself, well, hang on a minute, if Gold wasn't there for a minute, then George is then up front. Grouty is then in a position that's won him 7 or 8 man of the match awards this year, playing alongside Easty, if Easty's there. And let's be fair, when he plays alongside Easty, he's a different player. So to me, he can play alongside Adam Mann. He's going to be that, because they both of them emulate the class of a league above. So I just don't understand that. And if I could get to ask Tommy one question right now, it'd be that. It would be, why are you moving George back into Arthur's position, which then moves Arthur back into a left back position? And I think
and listen, Barry. So people will say Arthur Grout played at right back before he came to Eastbourne Borough. I've known Arthur for a lot of years. Yeah, he did play at right back. He's a very good right back in a flat back 4. All right, he hasn't played left back as a wing back in a 5 at the back system, and I think we had a discussion earlier in the week, Barry, and I so let's get it out and put it on the table. There's lots and lots of noise on social media about who's to blame for what goes on and the results we've got and what's going on the field. And you're absolutely right. There's 861 managers in that ground that all sit there and go, we should do this, we should do that. We're all the same when we watch Premiership clubs, right? Or England. We all think we could do better than the manager. However, the one thing that I will say is it's the manager that gets held accountable. And there's been an awful lot of talk about, but the recruitment's done by somebody else in the club. Well, no. The people that are on that field at the current moment in time have been recruited by our manager. All right. I think I said to you, how many players in the last couple of games have been recruited since Tommy came here? I think we were up to 8 out of the starting 11. Right. So that's Tommy's players. The club have backed Tommy to get whoever he needs in or whoever he wants in. There hasn't been a single player that Tommy has said, I want that player, and the club has said, no, we're not going to financially back that. So let me put that out there right now, because I can tell you factually that the budget that is being spent this season is around 6 times what it ever was before Simon came in. I've been down to see the paddle courts this morning. It's a thrive of activity down there. People from youngsters up to old age pensioners down there. If anybody wants to question whether or not there's a community feel down there, go and sit down in the paddle courts this morning, because there is. But the paddle courts have not financially impacted anything on the football field. The money for that was spent last year, by the way, so there's not been a penny put in this year out of any of the budgets. And the budget this year is bigger than it was last year on the football pitch. The money that is being spent on the management team and the playing staff on the football pitch is more than it has ever been. So this kind of, they're focusing on the wrong things, and whether you like the social media, whether you like the paddle courts, whether you like everything else that's going on around the club, as football fans, let's be honest, all we care about is what goes on the football pitch, right? And nobody can be knocked for the backing that has gone into putting people on the football pitch. Now, you can knock some of the decisions. We can argue till the cows come home. And, I was an instrumental part in selling the football club onto Simon. So, people want to question, why did you do that? Well, we've done it because we had a very successful football team at that moment in time. We had a very successful football club. Despite lots of people going out and going, we were going to go bust, we were going to do this, we were nowhere close to going bust. Okay. And if anybody wants to question that, just go and have a look at Company's House. 2 years before, we'd made a profit for the first time in 27 years. All right. So it's an absolute fallacy. The only reason we sold the club was because we felt we were in such a strong position, and we'd had 3 seasons on the trot of being in the playoff situations and being around the playoffs. And by the way, anybody that tells you Adam Murray was the saviour of our football club and the best manager we've ever seen, load of garbage. With the money that he had and the backing that he had, he should have won that football league that season. And actually, he got third in the table and lost in the playoffs. Danny Bloor's season, third in the playoffs, lost in the playoffs, and got to the Sussex Senior Cup final on a sixth of the budget that Adam Murray was on. So I don't buy into Adam Murray should have been held on to forevermore. The financial backing has been there. You can question were decisions made. I've got a big enough ego to go, if they'd have come in and just given us the money, we might have done really well with it. But that's just my ego talking. Right? That's all that is. We sold the club to Simon so that the club had the financial ability to go forward, grow. And Barry, I think you interviewed me on the playoff game last season where I shook Simon by the hand and said, Simon has done everything that he said he would do when he bought the football club. Financially, he has put every single penny in place to make things happen. Now, you can question, we've had the wrong manager. We've done that wrong. We all make mistakes in business, right? We all make things wrong. All you can do at that point is do something about it. So we made a mistake at the beginning of this season. I don't think anybody can question that we didn't make a mistake with that appointment. But they've done something about it. And actually put his money where his mouth is and backed the new manager in whatever way to transform the squad. Now, for whatever reason, that hasn't happened. But I would like people to stop thinking it's anything other than an issue on the football field, because it's an issue on the football field. It's a football club issue. It's a football team issue. And that's what needs to get put right, because we just need to start winning football games and winning points and getting us up that table. Can we do it?
Yeah,
Who knows? But I think as a fan base, we've got to stop looking for every other reason for why it's wrong other than the football team on the football pitch. And we've all entitled to an opinion on that. We're all entitled to be those 861 managers and say, if I was the manager, I'd play this way. If I'd play a 4-4-2, I'd play Arthur Grout in the centre mid. I'd play somebody else up front. You're all entitled to that opinion. Yeah. But the accountability comes down to the manager and his management team, who, by the way, he's been allowed to bring in whoever he wants at whatever cost. And the accountability lies on the football pitch. So let's not get caught up in, it's because we've shut down the bowls hall. It's because we're on social media. It's because of it's not any of those reasons. All of those things are actually positive aspects of a businessman trying to make even more money to invest even more into the football club.
Yeah, and I understand that. I think, when we were saying, or when you were saying there about the Danny Bloor, Adam Murray situation, and what was occurring at the clubs at the time, I think, a lot of questions, certainly to me, and I don't believe I'm a mouthpiece of the club, but obviously people do watch the podcast and they ask me, we're totally independent, but they ask me, would you discuss certain stuff? And one of the things that I've been asked on numerous occasions to discuss, and it was going to be a discussion for the end of the season, but I'm going to kind of bring it in now, is a little bit on the whole part-time, full-time basis, you know. And I think that when you look at some of the players that, are part-time players that are now playing at Horsham because they don't want to be far away, playing locally, that don't want the travel, but they're still in our league, right? So they don't mind the travel in our league, but they can't be doing the full-time job. I think that's a question that's being asked. And I think when we compare,
So listen, Barry, let me answer that one, because absolutely, my view, right, rightly or wrongly, and I never want to be that ex-chairman that says, "Oh, I told you so," "Oh, you should be doing this," because I hated it when it happened to me. I'd hate to do that to Simon, right? Personally, I believe if we'd have stayed part-time in that first season, we'd have got promoted, right? Personal opinion. But the ambition of Simon coming into the football club and what we bought into was, actually, I'm going to put enough money in to take us full-time to grow and develop and get up through the leagues. Now, if we'd have got promoted last season, we'd have already been full-time. We wouldn't have had that massive transition into the National League. It would have been a seamless transition because we'd have just gone to the National League. We'd already be full-time. We'd already be invested in coaches, on travel, and players coming in and eating and training and all of those kind of things that were around it. So if we'd have been promoted last season, nobody would be questioning it. It was a decision that was made. Right? Now, first season, listen, did it work? No, of course it didn't work. Right? And there is very definitely some great part-time players out there that are better than the weaker full-time players. They just don't want to play full-time football. But when you make that decision as a business decision, that's where you have to go. And sometimes that means you lose some great people. But that's no different in any business world. Right? I've taken business decisions in the past running motorway service areas or running restaurant chains or whatever it might be, where you go, actually, I'm going to go in this direction. What that means is you might lose that customer. If I put it into context, I put a post out on LinkedIn a couple of weeks ago about a local cafe that has suddenly started doing Just Eat. I have a hatred of Just Eat. I've been in hospitality and retail all my life. And I put a post out, because I'm entitled to, because I'm a customer, saying, I've had a bad experience at that place for the first time in 10, 15 years because I was stood behind Just Eat delivery drivers. They may lose me as a customer. Now, as it happens, I've gone back since. I've had a good relationship. But as a business decision, I respect what their business decision is, because their business decision says, actually, we might lose Dave Blackmore as a customer, but we've gained 20 other customers through Just Eat. You make a decision, we want to go full-time because our ambition is to be a full-time club. That means that you can't have the James Hammonds of this world. James Hammond was offered a chance to come full-time and play full-time football. He's a bank manager with a career, wants to play part-time football, right? But guess what? If Horsham go up this season and decide to go full-time, guess what will happen with James Hammond? He'll leave and he'll go somewhere else to play part-time football with a club that hasn't got the ambition to go full-time and go up through the leagues. That's just... So you either want the ambition or you want to stay with the part-time players that, even if you do go up, won't be able to stay with you anyway.
Yeah.
So I might think that we'd have gone up with our part-time squad, but we'd have had to change it straight away because none of them would have been able to play full-time the following season. So why not take the risk at the lower end before that massive jump into the National League?
I think what I'm hearing from people and what they're saying is that if it had been done at the end of the first season, and again, like you said, listen, it's business decisions. It's people that are owning and running a business that are making them decisions. We're just basically the supporters, the customers. But as we've said, as we've had discussions before, even when you was in charge, when you was chairman of the club, if I felt something was wrong, I would come to you and say, Dave, look, this isn't right, and you would give me the answers, because I feel, and obviously we've had discussions about this before, that as long-term supporters, not only do we have a right to question decisions that go on at the club, but we probably have an obligation as well to the people that founded this club years ago, because whoever is in charge at the time is basically a custodian of our club. I understand they're the ones putting the money in. They're a custodian of your club. And so I think I don't think the whole full-time thing was something that people said should never happen. Their argument is possibly it should have happened over the course of the season, so you could have drawn full-time players in and gone maybe to a hybrid model, which would have allowed you to carry on having the James Hammonds and your Carters and people like that, as well as.
Barry, that's hindsight questioning, right? And,
Of course it is,
and let's be really clear. And I agree with you, and I've said this to you before. I think we're obliged to ask questions. We're obliged to challenge and ask those hard, tough questions. We're not obliged to get personal. And I'll tell you now, when I was chairman, there were some very personal comments about me and decisions that I made. I made some controversial decisions that people didn't like and still hate me for to this day. But they were always done with the best interests of the club at heart. Some of them I would never discuss because they were private and confidential between certain people, and those individuals knew what was going on, but other people would pile on with a load of personal stuff. It got to the point where, as a fan of 40-odd years of this football club, right, I started watching them when they played on the parks opposite the leisure pool. My wife suddenly couldn't come down the club because she didn't want to come down because of the abuse that I was getting as a person. All right. That's not right. That's not proper. That's not correct in any way, shape, or form. So I would say to everybody, yes, we're obliged to ask questions about decisions that are made. We are not obliged, and we shouldn't be allowed even to start getting so personal, because that affects everybody's mental well-being. But it doesn't just affect the person either. It affects their family, it affects other people around them, and it affects the positive feeling. And it also, by the way, takes away the credibility of anything that anybody's saying. So somebody with something really credible to ask and to put forward as a question loses its credibility the minute it becomes personal.
Yeah, I totally agree with that.
And people need to understand that. Entitled to opinions, but lose all credibility as soon as it gets personal with people.
Yeah, I think that's what Simon's been trying to I try and get across in like the different podcasts. We did one last in the couple weeks ago, and did one with another American company recently. I think it's important for sort of Simon to and Alan and whoever on the board of the club, etc. To so you sort of got to filter out the noise. I think sometimes like some people are going to have ridiculous opinions about things about the social media or what their long-term ambitions are. They're going to question things that this is incorrect when they're saying things. I mean, you've got to filter those bits out, and then also take on the constructive bits that people who genuinely are trying to help the club, and take those bits and pieces on board, and not see any negativity as something like a sort of attack on their project. I guess is what I'm trying to say.
And Miles, I think you're absolutely right. And listen, I used to work really hard to try and ignore the people that I've thought actually they haven't got any credibility anyway. So actually, just ignore them, right? And I do feel that I think Simon made a comment that his comments are being misconstrued and twisted into something they're not. Listen, I know Simon, and he loves Eastbourne Borough Football Club already, as does his son Benji, who puts an awful lot into it, as does Alan Williams, right? And I think the difficulty is that when he's talking about fans being at fault and fans not being support, their fans not supporters and all this, he's talking about that minor little group that genuinely are just jumping on social media. They don't even come to the games, half of them. They're just jumping on there. They want to have a pop. They want to get personal about things. And that's who he's talking about. Unfortunately, that sometimes comes across as it's all the supporters' fault. Right?
Yeah.
That's not what's meant. And I know that's not what's meant. But you're right. It needs to be put across in that way.
Yeah, and equally, I think with a lot of the frustrations like on the pitch, as you say, are boiling to the off the pitch stuff, and it's been sort of used like a bit of a scapegoat sometimes. I've had some conversations with particularly Benji recently, and they are fully aware they've massively messed up this season. They are accountable for the decisions they've made, and particularly I think the management, like you said, with Matt Graves just being a bit of a shambles from start to finish, and then we're not even sure at this point. The jury's down whether Tommy was a good appointment as well, given the fact that his objective when he came in was to keep us up, and currently we're looking like we're going down. So, you just sort of stand by the decisions you make as a chairman, don't you? And I feel like people need to.
You do. And I think people need to, Barry, we had this conversation earlier in the week. I love talking about factual stuff. right? So if it's a fact that happened, we can discuss it, we can argue about it, we can say, is it right, is it wrong, what's that? So I've read loads of stuff about, Alan Williams is to blame for the recruitment of all the players at the beginning of this season. It's his fault. That's why he should go out. He should get rid of him because all the recruitment was down to him. Well, if that was true, we'd have recruited the entire team during the summer when we didn't have a manager, because we wouldn't have needed a manager to do all the recruitment, right? The actual fault was that we probably recruited the manager a bit too late. Whose fault was that? Well, that's probably because of Matt Gray's availability, us looking for the right person. But the fact of life is our recruitment was done quickly at the beginning of the season when we got the manager in place. So I don't mind knocking the fact we got the manager in too late, but don't go, Alan's to blame for all the recruitment. But actually, it all happened at the beginning of the season when we waited for a manager. If Alan was doing all of the recruitment and was totally to blame for that squad being put together, well, it would have been put together during the summer because we wouldn't have needed a manager to put it together. So it's just not factually correct to say the manager had no input into that. Alan's job, so I can tell you how it works. The manager says, I want that player. Alan's job is then to go and get that deal put across the line. Now, as a manager, that's really, really great at this level of football because normally you have to go and find the player, go and do the negotiating, work with the agents, do all this. But here, actually, they go, I want that player. Alan, go get them for me. And Alan then goes and does all of that work. Yeah. So if Alan can't negotiate, fine. But do you know what? I don't think we've lost a single player that the manager has gone, I want that player. We certainly haven't done it through lack of financing. We certainly haven't done it because we've gone, no, you can't have them. So that's how the recruitment works at the football club. So you can blame Alan for not negotiating hard enough to get a player in that the manager wanted, if you want, because that's his job. But I don't think we've lost a single player through that currently. So, we just need to be careful about what we're doing. And that's why I keep on coming back to, I want to hold the people accountable for on the pitch stuff that are on the pitch, the management team, the players. I want to talk about that. I'd love to be able to go, it's because they weren't given enough money. Well, I'll tell you what, they're given enough money to absolutely be up at the top of this league.
Yeah, I think Simon said sort of similar on the podcast when he said that it wasn't I think his praise was there wasn't a player that they put an offer for in the league that they wanted, essentially, as in, like, I tried to get every player that they was on the shortlist, I guess, but for one reason or another, I think a lot of it was probably Matt Gray's style of football.
Yeah,
People
absolutely.
not wanting to come and play direct football, and then particularly we've heard the location of it. Good to get your thoughts on that, Dave, as well, just considering it's sort of, I think it's sort of a halfway house of our location. Like, we're not like Truro. We're not saying we're like horrendously out the way and it's awful, but we're not like on the outskirts of London. Like, what's your experience with getting players in, getting down to Eastbourne, that sort of thing? Because that's been a challenge I've heard from like Simon, etc.
So it was always a challenge for us as a club because we didn't put them up in accommodation and stuff, right? But actually now that we put them up in accommodation and everything else. Now, if you want to join a team that is at the top of the table in the summer on the Sunshine Coast in a lovely coastal town like Eastbourne, where you can come down and stay and live in Eastbourne and play for a team that's at the top of the table, I don't think that's too difficult to sell. Trying to get players to come to a team that are in relegation in the middle of winter when we've got storms and everything else going along the coastline, I think that's quite a hard sell, right? Because we're only recruiting from 3 sides. So then you're reliant on, Tommy's got a couple of players travelling down from King's Lynn and staying over a few nights and all that kind of stuff. Well, but that's down to contacts and players. If we were at the top end of the table, I think you'd find it a lot easier to recruit players all of a sudden because they want to play for a team that are suddenly moving up, right? And going up through the thing. So location is an issue. There's no question about it. On the South Coast, it's far more difficult to get players than it is in the centre of London or the centre of the country. But it's far easier when you're at the top of the table and it's summer.
Like a negative spiral, whatever I call it, a vicious cycle. That's the one I'm looking for.
Yeah. David, I know you've got to go soon. So, Bobby, have you got anything you'd like to ask David before he goes?
David, just, I hate to mention the word relegation, but obviously, while you were chairman, obviously we did have spells obviously down the bottom of the table. Looking at this season, obviously people have quoted that we have no plan to go down. Is it important that at this stage we need to plan for the inevitable? Because while you were in the chairman, we obviously were a lower half team. We did have relegation fights. Like I think for a couple of seasons we were 18th to 16th. Like, how much can relegation from this division into a division below hurt a club?
So, Bobby, I think, listen, my first season in charge, I remember sitting at Slough, and in the 89th minute, we were safe. In the 91st minute, we were relegated. And in the 94th minute, we scored an equaliser that kept us up on the last game of the season. So, yes, of course, we've been there. In answer to your question, it's twofold. So if I put my business hat on for a second and go, actually, do I think that if we were relegated, so as a fan, this would absolutely kill me. I have to tell you, I was close to tears on Saturday because I've been a fan of this football club for a long, long time. We're the longest serving members of the National League South, and it would be absolutely devastating for us to be relegated. I think it's absolutely vital that we start now. I mean, there's probably about a 25% chance we stay up now, right? So, of course, we've got to be looking at next season and going, right, what if? Because we've got to plan and go, if that was to happen, how do we make sure we come back immediately? So I think you've got to start going and looking at how are Folkestone doing what they're doing. What they're walking that league at the moment and doing it really, really well, really, really successfully. How are they doing it? How do we make sure that we dominate that next level down so that it is just a blip and we come straight back up? Of course, that's right. From a financial perspective and a business perspective, I have to tell you, it wouldn't be a disaster. Right? Because all of your costs suddenly go down. I'd like to bet as a fan base, right? I can always remember Brighton Hove Albion. Their fan base in their final season in the Championship, you couldn't get a ticket to go and see Brighton Hove Albion because they were successful. They were winning every week. Get into the Premiership, start losing every week. All the fans think it's absolutely rubbish. Where we currently got 860 at the game on Friday, what do you think the crowd would be when we're at the top of the table against Lewis?
I mean, Folkestone. I mean, again, you look at Folkestone for an example. They get less. They're getting loads. They're getting thousands in.
Well, of course they are, because they're a successful team, winning football games. So if we went down, our costs would be massively lower. We wouldn't have all the travel that we currently have. We'd probably be in the top half of the table against local teams that would bring a lot of fans to our games, and we'd go away to their games, right? So financially, I don't think it's that big a deal, if I'm honest. As a fan base, as a football club, mate, it would be devastating because the ambition is absolutely to take us up through the leagues, right? So my absolute hope is that we somehow keep ourselves safe this season and get it absolutely nailed on and right for next season to push on. It's harder now than it was a couple of years ago. Right, it's harder now than it was last year. I can tell you now. I had a conversation with the Farnborough directors when they were down. They genuinely believe they'll be one of only 4 part-time teams if they manage to stay up for next season. And the teams that are full-time are now spending as much, if not more, than we are. 2 seasons ago, we were the big spenders, right? We were the people out there. Now it gets harder and harder. But I think it's absolutely vital we start thinking behind the scenes. What if? What do we do? How do we cope with that? What would our business model be? How would that push us forward? Do we try and do the Isthmian Liga full time, or do we have to then drop into going, actually, to work at this level, we've got to go hybrid model, part time? And those discussions will be taken place behind the scenes, Bobby. Don't think they won't. Those discussions will be getting had behind the scenes, but with a very clear, that's not what we want to happen. We want to stay up, even if it's by a 94th minute equaliser, and push on again next season. We stayed up that season for a 94th minute equaliser in the very last game of the season. 2 seasons later, we were in the playoffs.
I think as well, the problem with the division below is that it has a reputation for being extremely hard to get out of. And you look at teams like St Albans and Welling, who both went down last season, and the Welling are looking, I don't know if they still are, but I know they were looking at the brink of another relegation into the Eastern South East. And you look at St Albans and they're not even in the top 10. But then you look at teams like Averley, for example, who are second in the league.
Yeah.
So I think from my perspective as a fan, if we go down, me and Mike had a discussion the other day. In our eyes, we got to throw what we have at it. We got to throw what we've got resources wise, and we got to try and get out that league in the first season. I think if we're in there for more than a season, I think it's going to be very hard to get out of.
Bobby, I think our league's a really difficult one to get out of. I think the league below us is a really difficult one to get out of, and I think you're absolutely right. The difference between us and the Wellings of this world and the other clubs that have gone down and stayed down is they haven't got a hierarchy who have put as much money into the club as ours have, and so therefore have far more to lose than ours by having that demise, and who are absolutely committed, and I can tell you this now, they are absolutely committed to the future of Eastbourne Borough Football Club, and so therefore would be doing absolutely everything in their power to get us straight back up at the earliest opportunity. There's not even a question in my mind that if we were to get relegated, anybody's walking away from Eastbourne Borough Football.
And I think that Simon and Alan want us to be successful.
Absolutely.
And I think, and obviously we're not going to go down. We're not going to go down. If we go down, they're going to walk away and leave us stranded.
No.
They want us to be successful. So yes, they might. Yes, people have obviously spent however long questioning and wanting answers. But I think realistically, if we go down, we are going to get out of it. It's just a matter of how, when.
Listen, I hope and pray, Bobby, we don't go down.
No, I think everyone does. I think everyone does. Everyone does. Deep down, we all don't want to go down. We've never been in a Premier League team, which is terrifying. If you put it that way, it's a little bit more scary.
Yeah.
We obviously got plopped into National League South when it first. As I said, we were the longest serving team in this division, and then we went up. We went up in 2009. We were sort of, who are Eastbourne Borough doing in the National League?
Yeah.
It's just teams like Lewis, obviously. That season we went up, they dominated the league. They were the big powerhouse, Lewis were. And then they've got relegated from National League, then relegated from the South, and they've not come up since. And I don't want to be doom and gloom and say, if we go down, we're not going to come back up. But honestly, deep down, I want us to stay up. But if we do go down, I just hope we come back up with.
Listen, it's not going to be a walk in the park if we do, right?
No, we're not going to win every game. We're not going to go unbeaten in that division. No. Folkestone have lost games.
Yeah, and I think you're right, Bobby, in the fact of it's not only the difference between. I mean, the game has massively advanced in the last 15, 20 years, and I remember when we went up to the National League, all of a sudden we had to stop at services, didn't we, Dave? And get police escorts. Our coaches had to have police escorts to the football grounds. We had 72, 72 and 85-year-olds on there, but we had to have a police escort to certain grounds because that was the way they did it. So, it is a massive difference in league above, but I think that the gap has closed. And some of them, I mean, when we went to the National League, when you turned up at some of them grounds and when you saw the structure that they had in place, the squad of players that they had assembled, the match day staff that they had, it was frightening. You agree, David? I think it was.
It's a different level again, right? And our club would have to step up a different level again if we went up.
Yes.
What I would say to you, and genuinely here, and I'd beg all the fans to think about this when they start talking about, oh, it's not a community club anymore. It's not this, it's not that, it's not all the other bits. The beauty that Eastbourne Borough has against the Wellings of this world and the other people that have got relegated is the fact of how strong a community club Eastbourne Borough Football Club is. I can think back to 3 years ago where half of the people that are on Facebook currently were rejoicing that the old guard were going because they hated what we'd done. We never had any ambition, didn't care about going up, which was just as false back then as it is now, right? But we sold the club for a very clear reason, for there to be the financial backing for the club to achieve what we've always wanted to achieve. You go down that club on a Saturday morning and see the Spirit of Football Club that, fine, was not invented in Simon's time. We always had a Spirit of Football squad down there, but it's bigger and it's better now than it ever has been. The women's team, I beg people, go down and watch our women's team. We're now paying a women's team that is exceptionally talented and exceptionally good on our football field. I'd argue that team will probably reach the dizzy heights of being up there quicker than our men's team, right? Go down and watch all the youth teams that are still down there that get kits supplied by our football club. Go down to the paddle court this morning. I saw an 8-year-old lad playing on there with a 68-year-old woman. Right. So beyond going, and yes, listen, it's very sad that the Bowls Club went, because it was a hub of the community for about 85 to 100 people of an older age group. Right. There was more than that down there today just to have a look at paddle courts from all age groups. We have a really strong community club down there that now has the financial backing to do all the things that we always wanted to do down there. If the worst in the world happens and we go down, we've still got that community club. We've still got that financial backing. And I genuinely, hand on heart, believe we'll bounce back up very, very quickly. And I genuinely believe as well that the powers to be that will die trying to do that. They have as much passion for this football club. Fine, they haven't been there 40 odd years like some of us, but they have a passion for that football club. And by the way, have invested a hell of a lot of money in trying to make it what all the fans want. So yes, we can all have an opinion and we can all be hurting, but I tell you what, my bank balance isn't hurting half as much as some people that are involved in the club at the moment.
So, David, I want to thank you for coming on. I know we've overrun your time limit, and I don't want to feel the wrath of feel the wrath of Helen. Before you go, because we'll probably continue after you've gone. Before you go, just quick fire. Are you going to Horsham on Tuesday?
I will go to Horsham on Tuesday, yes.
And a score prediction for us?
3-0.
3-0. And are you going to Chesham on Saturday?
I may be going to Chesham on Saturday. I'm not quite sure yet.
And can we have a score prediction for that, please?
We'll get a draw out of Chesham.
Right. Okay. So a 3-0 victory at Horsham.
Yeah.
And a draw up at Chesham. David, once again, thanks for your time. Always a pleasure to have you on.
No worries at all. Always welcome.
And we will see you down the club very soon.